Hey, what's up? This is Gabe Taylor, and I'm here with Josh Feinberg and Chris Engelhardt from the Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center. Chris, how long have you been with the center?
This will be my third season here.
And Josh?
Well, I worked a few years, and then I took a break, and then I'm back, and so this will probably be number 7 or so.
So Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center, it's a fairly vague term, and when you think of how much area the center covers, how big is it actually?
Yes, I forgot that statistic off the top of my head, but it's large. It's super large. It's all the way from
more than 10 drainages, probably.
more than 10 drainages from Virginia Lakes to the north down to Bishop Creek to the south is our official zone of actually forecasting that people can read for, and that's the zone we're covering. But we get observations, and we have users that go up to as far up to Bridgeport and down to Lone Pine, Mount Whitney area. So we'll take observations from all that area. So yeah, it's a huge span of mountains. 3 of us forecasters. Steve Mace, unfortunately, Steve Mace wasn't able to make it today, unfortunately. But he's the 3 of us are a strong team. Feel like now, and then we have observers as well, volunteer observers. Some who submit once or twice a week consistently throughout the whole season, which we're super grateful for. And others that just submit now and again, which we're very grateful for as well. It's a huge zone, and we really value and appreciate those bits of information that people give us when they're out and about, because we can't cover it all.
Yeah, we need eyes out there. Let's go over a quick review. 1920, it started out with a bang. Thanksgiving went off, and then not so much. So what did you guys see last year?
Yeah, not so much. Went on for quite a long time. Thanksgiving was great. Everyone got psyched. We had this big storm. And then beginning of December, we had a little bit more snow. It kept the enthusiasm going. And then it really it turned off all the way till when, Chris? What was it like?
Kind of a weird start too, though. I mean, because the first storm, the snow density was really low. There wasn't a ton of moisture in it. A lot of snow, but...
Yeah, we had good cold temperatures in December and some blower powder conditions for skiing. It was great. And December was great. January and February literally went completely dry. We only got 1 storm in January and 1 storm in February that were very minor storms. And throughout that course of time, we had 44 days of low danger on the avalanche rating on the bulletin we produce. If you compare this last season, 1920, we had 52 days of low danger compared to the season before that everybody remembers was quite a great one for snow totals. We only had 10 days of low danger the year before. So we had a super significant lull and no precipitation. And there was so little snow that even the southerly aspects, you couldn't ski corn because there was no snow on them. Last year, unfortunately. So only the hardy persisted and survived, but I still managed to find stuff to slide on throughout the year.
Cool. And I think a big problem was getting from A to B. I mean, I remember boilerplate, like slide for your life type conditions for a couple months.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot actually in our bulletins with the hazard being low in regards to avalanche hazard. Some of the biggest hazards were obstacles and taking slide for lives on really firm conditions. So we were definitely encouraging the use of crampons and ice axes quite a bit through the year, and using the good judgment of what terrain you really wanted to sneak into.
So Chris, when you have a day that you can go ski for yourself, what drainage do you look to go to? Do you have like kind of your favorite lines that you want to go ski?
Well, being a Bishop local, when it's in, I mean, there's nothing that beats the big descents in the buttermilks, which is, the Humphreys and Mount Tom area. But that doesn't always come into play. I didn't even get to hardly ski them last year that much. So, yeah, I like to target that stuff, especially being a remote area and kind of hard to get to. There's generally not as many people seeking out that area down there. So it's good to have more of we're trying to broaden the presence of the Avalanche Center from Mammoth-centric to trying to cover the whole zone, especially when the southern area does get the snow. typically Mammoth area gets more snow by far all the time than, say, the southern end of the zone, because it's more of a rain shadow effect down there. So,
which is kind of a decent segue to what we could potentially be seeing come 2021. So at the end of last year, we all know we had to shut down. We were encouraging people to stay indoors and be safe. We didn't want to be a strain on our medical community. But we did see a lot of people going out into the backcountry. And based off of sales from this past year, we are expecting that we're going to see something similar coming into the next year. So what do you think is a good way to look at this season? How are we going to educate people? And if for my buddy that comes up and says, hey, where do I start? I want to go out into the backcountry. Where do I start? What would you say to them?
well, I'd say it's not just about having the equipment and knowing how to use that equipment, but also educating yourself and surrounding yourself with people that might have more experience than you to get you online on really how to travel and analyze the terrain in a way that you can mitigate your hazards as much as possible. And I think it's really up to, in the state of affairs we're in, to the more experienced people that have been doing this for a while to take ownership in helping these people out. So I think it's not only up to the new people maybe that are just getting into backcountry riding or skiing to learn about it, but it's also to us that have embraced it and loved it for a long time to try to work. I think working together has been a theme throughout the last 6 months for all of us, and I think that needs to carry through.
There's all different levels out there, and we were all at that stage where we first went out and knew nothing and probably did some idiotic things. Looking back on it, I know I did. I was like, wow, I just went up that thing with no clue that there was an avalanche possible. And yeah, I think we all start off somewhere. We don't know anything. And so putting yourself in that position and remembering, like, hey, there's this guy who's going out. He's excited. If you tell him to stay home, he's not going to stay home. But just to be kind to him. And, if they're going to be responding that way, you just got to step back and be like, hey, have a great day, that they're on their own. There's a handful of really great companies locally that offer avalanche courses, basic, barely have ventured in the backcountry courses that are, tailored to any level, anywhere from like a day awareness to a 3-day, AVI Rec 1 course, and beyond. So I think taking advantage of those, if you have the means, is a great deal. And like Chris said, going out with people you trust, friends, that's a great way to learn for sure too. And like Chris said as well, like, we're all out there. We're all a team. We don't want to let other people out there to get hurt. I mean, if we see something that's going on and we can give them a little piece of advice. Oftentimes I see somebody and I try to gently like give a little like, hey, you want to know a little bit about this? Or, not trying to tell them to be condescending, but just to offer some advice in a helpful way that usually people are pretty damn open to it. And I think if you can just be like, oh, look at those idiots over there, good luck to them, and walk away, you can like, hey, what's up, guys? How you guys doing out here?
Yeah, it's easy to get judgmental and just want to protect your own zone and just be like, I'm not helping that guy. I'm going out to my spot. Like, what are they doing here? But I think I am really encouraged to see increased travel in the backcountry. Hopefully everybody can do it safely, because I think that's just going to encourage me to go further or find different spots or get more creative and find new stuff, because a lot of times I will go back to the same thing over and over again when I probably could have gotten a little more creative or learned a little bit more. So I think like what you were saying is just kind of embracing all these new people and helping them and just giving them some information. If they don't want to hear it, if they're just going to be like, I know what I'm doing, get away. Well, yeah, all right. Like, we can only do so much, go check out the website, hope that they have the stuff. And, if they're going to be following me around and I'm going to rely upon them to save my life potentially, well, they better know what they're doing. And I guess that's just who you're picking and the decisions that you're making. I think something that I go back to quite a bit is danger mitigation. And I think that's come up quite a bit over the last couple of years. So for those new backcountry travelers, how would you start with assessing danger for your guys' jobs specifically? Let's start with your guys' jobs.
I think without even knowing anything about avalanches and snowpack and everything that's going on with layers, if you can recognize avalanche terrain, like if you can really recognize like, hey, this slope is steep enough to slide, or a slope above it is steep enough to slide or not, you can do a ton just by realizing what avalanche terrain is and what it's not. You can go out and have a great day and never get into a situation where an avalanche could even hit you in the worst of conditions. So I think that is the first step. It's a really important thing, and it's not as obvious as it may seem. You know, getting out your inclinometer and checking out slopes and testing your eyes, and keep doing that until you get an eye for how steep a slope really needs to be to slide. I think that's important. There's a lot of resources online too, on the avalanche.org. They have a whole bunch of links towards online education you can do. There's lots of great books. So if you can't take a course is a great thing, and you should really strive to do that. But there's a lot of other resources you can take advantage of.
Yeah, given the current state, it might be kind of hard to do that person-on-person, mano-a-mano learning situations. But books, online, and experience. I think that's a big one. You guys both mentioned experience being a huge one. And
I think, there's a lot of you look at these steep lines out there, like, oh, I want to go ski that. And people are used to skiing the mountain hard. They want to go charge out in the backcountry hard, and they need to be able to realize you need to maybe take a step back from that and start off slow. And if you jump right into things that have the potential for some bad outcomes could happen. So I think really just starting off at a reasonable rate and going to mellow terrain first until you start learning more, and gradually pushing it as you get more comfortable.
I mean, because we're surrounded by these massive 12,000 foot plus mountains, and so your eyes are always just like gazing, like, oh, bloody, a red slate, these huge mountains. Whereas a lot of times your eyes actually just go right past something that might be more suited to what your ability level is in the backcountry. So I think like getting people to really gear down and maybe take your eyesight down a little bit. Like instead of looking at Bloody, look at No Name Peak. And like there's some really cool tree skiing on No Name Peak, and nobody goes there, but people go right past it to Bloody. And I think that comes up quite a bit. I see with people like really striving with these goal setting. And I think that can be a little dangerous around here because it is really close and it is really accessible too.
That goal setting, I think, is a huge thing. I think I've been guilty of it plenty of times in the past, of having your eyes set on some peak, some line that you want to ski, and getting up there. And you're like, I've done all this work to get up there, and we're so close, got to keep pushing it. And realizing that the hardest decision, much harder decision and much harder to do, is to choose to turn around. Like, oh, it's not the day today. Like, these are some signs, some things we're seeing we don't like, to turn around and come back another day. And totally. I think that's really important for, I admire people who can do that a lot more than those people who are just charging and getting lucky a bunch.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of the best days I've ever had in my life have been turning around, coming home safe, and saying, I just made a really hard decision, but I'm home and I'm safe. And you talk about goal setting, and a big thing is, somebody's coming up, and hey, next Tuesday we're gonna go do red slate. I'll just use an example. And it's like, well, the snow doesn't know that it's Tuesday. And it's like setting your calendar up with all these goals. And like, I know people that like, they'll put checklists on a paper, and like this date we're gonna do this, and this date we're gonna do this. And the snow doesn't necessarily know that. So I think being able to adapt and teaching people that, it's okay to say no today and to move on to something different and have some fallback plans and know how to do that. I guess, how do you help people turn around?
Well, I think one of the most important things with traveling in a winter environment and backcountry skiing is always having the ability to be flexible and to adjust your plans on the go. You might have a goal a week ahead of time. Maybe that changed for the morning you went out, and then it might change after being out for 2 hours if the snow intensity it's dumping, right? Or the wind is super high and you didn't realize that. So you need to be able to adjust your plans accordingly, constantly, daily, hour by hour, minute by minute while you're out there, and realize that. That's one of the most important things about, I feel like, with backcountry skiing or riding, as well as using all the resources you can, that Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center, the esavalanche.org, keeping track of the weather if you're coming from out of town or if you're traveling to a different area or going to Wyoming or Canada, whatever it may be, that you track the Avalanche Center there or the weather there to see what's happening, so you have historical knowledge before you get in unknown terrain of what's been going on with the snow. So, and that's all tiered on top of having that common sense knowledge and getting to know what avalanche terrain is and where it's appropriate to travel, not just downhill, but uphill too. So using those weather resources, using the avalanche bulletin that Josh and Steve and I produce, or another avalanche bulletin from a different area you're traveling in. So you have that kind of homework, so to speak. And then once you get out there in the field, you're paying attention to the weather. You're also hopefully maybe performing some of your own physical stability tests out there. Maybe it's, just doing some probe polling of the snow. Looking, is there recent avalanche activity out there? Oh, is it getting really hot? Is there stuff starting to roll off southerly slopes? Is it really blowing and I can just see the wind physically loading the snow on the leeward side of the slope? Is there cornice development, like big curling things off the end of the ridges that show that snow is building up? Just being hyper aware. So you're constantly observing and have that background knowledge. So when you get out there, you can adjust, go in with some good homework, and then adjust as you go, depending on what the conditions are giving you. So I think we do that not only to give the public that knowledge to work with, but then we're using it ourselves when we get out there to adjust our own plans. And yeah, we might have the goal of we want to dig a snow profile in a certain slope on a certain aspect, but a lot of times we don't get there, especially if the conditions are such, like 2 years ago when the snow is really hitting hard all the time and it's really windy and really stormy. It's just, you got to use your best judgment of, is it really worth it or not?
Yeah, totally. I think that's one thing that we deal with a lot around here. And I know every area of North America has different snow conditions, but we have a lot of wind and we have a lot of rapid warming. We will get up to 60 degrees in January sometimes, and not every area deals with that. So I think those are some really complex problems. What are some other problems you see around the Sierra?
Well, definitely the biggest driver is wind, as you spoke to. And it doesn't mean it has to be snowing and windy to have an issue. You could have some residual snow that fell 2 days ago, and maybe then the wind starts blowing from a different direction and starts loading up kind of a different aspect than it did a few days before. So big mid-storm avalanches, when we're getting those really big maritime events, are the biggest avalanche phenomena in the Sierra, typically when you're getting natural avalanches during these big storm events. And then obviously the mountains are so big here, you need to really be aware, like when you can't see, am I under something that's 4,000, 2,000 vertical feet above me that could hit me from above? But then, we don't have as generally the really bad persistent weak layers like like a continental climate in Colorado has most of the time. But we have these new storm instabilities, fresh snow instabilities, and particularly driven by wind, because it's very windy and exposed on the east side.
Yeah, I would agree with all that for sure. And some of that, what Chris mentioned about the lack of persistent weak layers underneath the snow. We have generally speaking, we have a kind of a simple snowpack, and a lot of times it is quite stable compared to some other climates in Colorado and other places. And that can lead to this sense of safety that doesn't really exist necessarily. People can get really nonchalant about going out and skiing steep lines or just moderate lines that still can avalanche. Because a lot of times it is stable and you can get away with that. But there's times here where it's not. And I think a lot of people out here in the backcountry don't know as much as people in the Rocky Mountains know. Like out in the Rockies, you really need to know your stuff about how to ski certain slopes, because things are just much more unstable there. And here, people can just go out and get lucky a lot without even knowing it. So I think that's one of the bigger hazards too. Winds, like Chris said, is one of the biggest sculptors of avalanches, and most of the avalanche, a lot of the avalanche accidents that happen are because of winds.
So going into 2021, operationally, what are our plans for this season as far as forecasts?
Well, the plan is to start 7 days a week advisories, December 15th. That's snow dependent. If it starts dumping and we're on, and things are changing rapidly, before that, we'll probably start issuing advisories frequently before that. Whether that's 3 days a week or 7 days a week, it all depends on how the conditions are going. But the plan is December 15th through April 1st at least, and possibly into middle of April to be 7 days a week. A lot of that, it takes money to do that for hiring 3 forecasters. So a lot of that also depends on fundraising. And having the
yes.
budget to be able to do that.
Perfect segue, Josh.
All right.
Go to esac.com and please feel free to donate. The center is run by us. It's run by everybody's contributions. So
yeah, our center's pretty different than a lot of centers. There's a few of us in the country that are independent, that aren't affiliated with the Forest Service. So all of the funding that we get is raised by their board of directors, who are very passionate and motivated to work hard to make the center what it is. So yeah, we really depend on donors out there. If you're using this Avalanche Bulletin and you're getting useful information from it, please consider donating some money. Every little bit helps.
Totally. Anything else you'd want to state as we go into this very opportunistic 2020-21 season?
Well, yeah, as we sit here inundated with smoke, we can't even see the mountains today. It's been a wild and crazy 6 months for the whole world. And from what I do in the summertime, there's been a ton of people in the mountains. It's been really the only outlet, and a great outlet, I think, for folks. And I think we all probably realize that that's going to carry on to the winter. And also with the situation with developed ski areas potentially having to operate under different management techniques and things that they're going to try to do to keep everybody safe. At least I'm anticipating that the backcountry is going to be quite busy this year. And I think it's once again that mantra of all of us working together, both the experienced folks and the new folks, to not only keep people safe from the pandemic, but from avalanches is going to be pretty important. And also that people are pent up, stressed, needing an outlet, and that we all should enjoy it. And that's why we do it, and realize that if it is getting busier out there, that we do the right things to keep everybody safe and having fun.
Yeah, there's another colleague of ours in the snow industry that's working on some outreach for this season because of their anticipation of so many more new people coming out there. So not just avalanche savvy, knowing the snow safety, but also just etiquette out there, how to travel appropriately and how to interact with other people out there. So we're going to be putting some effort into that so people, what's the right thing to do out there? How do you do you go and ski over top of people that are climbing up a hill? Probably not the best idea. So there's a lot of different things that aren't necessarily obvious as someone new that we're going to try to put some work towards, some education outreach towards that. Let's see, 2021. Oh, just going back to that season, like the mountain shutting down in the middle of March. The day after the mountain shut down, we had some of the bigger storms of the season, and our local Sherwin's backcountry spot right out of town here, which usually maybe sees a dozen or 2 people a day on busier days, all of a sudden saw 200 plus people for a couple of days in a row. People are used to seeing the mountain, and a lot of those people were just, booting up there with their snowboard on their back or their skis under their arm. And
and that was people with transceivers, and that was people not using the skin track. That was people just using the boot pack. So you could probably extrapolate that number to 300 and something people. Yeah,
there's an inundation for sure, and you can't blame them. But at the same time, you really got to be smart. It's not skiing on a resort. They're not doing avalanche control up there or anywhere else. And just ignorance is bliss until it's not. And don't be that guy or gal.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been Gabe, and thank you, Josh. Thank you, Chris. We hope to see you out there. And if you have some money and you use the center, please donate. We appreciate it, and we will keep giving you as much information as we can to help you have as much fun as you can safely in the backcountry.